Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to Tenure Talks, where we interview battle-tested procurement leaders that have the scars to prove it. We ask the same 5 questions every week, providing you with chewable bits of expertise. I'm your host, Katie McEwen, the procurement girl representing Tealbook, the trusted source of supplier data. Get up-to-date, trustworthy data at your fingertips to ensure your procurement processes are operating at their full potential. I'm so excited to introduce y'all to our rockstar guest today. It's Paul Noel from Nipendo. Thank you so much for joining us, Paul.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I was so excited to see that you were going to be the guest today. Very exciting. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on right now.
I'm a procurement geek too, I guess. I know procurement girl is probably better than procurement geek, but whatever, it's a guy thing.
I like geek.
So I've been around for like more than 20 years now in procurement, mostly on the provider side. I worked at Ariba for a long time. I was at Evalua for a long time and helped to implement a number of procurement tools throughout the North America, Canada, and a little bit in Europe and beyond. More recently, I've been sort of advising companies on how to best use some of those tools because I've seen many different ways that they've come to market. And that brought me to Nipendo, where I'm the Chief Revenue Officer. So basically in charge of sales and marketing stuff, but really just doing what's my passion is bringing some of these solutions to companies out there, both on the buy side and the supply side. And Nipendo's approach here is a little bit unique in that they overlay on top of whatever tools people have already so that we can get really, our big deal is about adoption and getting suppliers or buyers to adopt these tools better by automating some of the more tedious aspects of them, helping them stretch beyond just indirect materials procurement, get into complex services and direct materials, but then also to increase adoption on the supply side. We really see that there's a gap in the market in terms of getting suppliers to participate with whatever the buyer is bringing to the party, and we can help there. We've been able to boast better than 90% adoption by suppliers over a 10-week period. So that supplier onboarding, supplier enablement problem is something that we really like to concentrate on. And the way we do it is with yes, AI, but really I don't like to use AI. AI is too much hype stuff. We use a lot of those tools, but I like to more think about it rather than artificial intelligence. It's more artificial reasoning. And what I mean by that is that it's those tools working, but not in a magic way. They explain what they do for you. So if we apply some rules and some machine learning, the machine actually tells us why they're doing those things, and that way humans can actually understand what the heck's going on. They can make edits to that and improve the process over time. So it's an interaction between humans and machines rather than just having the machines take over and us sit in the background and wonder if we're losing our lives or not. So that's kind of in a nutshell what's going on, that's what I'm doing.
That's awesome. Well, machines can't do it all.
No.
And that's what the lie that we were sold in the 90s was: adopt this e-procurement technology and all your problems go away. But what it sounds like with Nipendo, it's almost like a skin that goes over the e-procurement tool, sourcing tool, and actually creates more of a B2C experience that these folks are used to. And Generation Z, sitting at the table now, they're like, if I can't use it, like if it's not easy, like I'm not touching it. So that's amazing. 90%. That's incredible. Well done, Nipendo. So with that all in mind, what do you think stands out to you as having the biggest impact on your career? Who is that mentor? Who was that person that kind of unlocked your passion for maybe the space or for business in general?
Well, I guess I go back to my first boss, actually. So he wasn't much older than I was. I was working at a Japanese trading company here in Silicon Valley. This is where I grew up. And it was this weird job where we basically had to find a business. We had to find something that we could buy for lower and sell for higher. And it was super entrepreneurial, which you don't really associate with Japanese companies, but the nature of trading companies in Japan is that way. And he had been given this ability to hire one person, one college graduate, and try to make something out of it. And we fussed, we looked around and we tried different things, crazy things, for about a year, and then we found subcontract manufacturing. We were actually able to do things, and he kind of gave me the reins to go do that. And I learned how to sell, how to buy, how to kit things up and do inventory, and then do manufacturing control and everything that subcontract manufacturing has in it. And just him giving me those reins and giving me some boundaries was great, because I learned like the whole business that way, because it was all in one place. And I think that kind of colored my approach going on from there, was that I could kind of get into an operational thing and kind of know the context that I was working in, and from that be able to kind of get my feet under me and be able to run with it. So it had a big effect for me.
Yes, and what an opportunity to be able to touch so many different parts of the business.
Yeah, it was very
And to
cool.
be so young.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy, actually.
Yeah. Did that kind of unlock an entrepreneurial spirit in you? Because working in startups, you kind of have to have that, right?
Yes, it did. It was a weird entrepreneurial spirit, because it was internal to the company too, though. So I did end up working at lots of startups over my career, but more as a build out and scale out kind of guy, an internal entrepreneur, more than hanging out my shingle and trying to get some funding and dealing with all those kinds of things. So it was interesting from that point of view, but certainly made some new businesses within businesses. And at Ariba, basically, that's what I did, and made their first SaaS product at Ariba, and then was part of their product. I was their product manager for P2P, which is their largest product when that went to the cloud. So it's that innovation, but within a larger framework, kind of a safe space, if you will. Safe to fail, made it interesting.
That is interesting. And, thinking about your experience, I mean, you saw the rise of e-procurement technologies. Heck, I mean, you had a hand in building it. So Ariba, Ivalua. So what's the game-changing technology now? I mean, 2022, I mean, it's a whole new world. We got AI, we got ML. What's the unicorn of technology? What is it?
Well, I think the AI hype cycle has kind of peaked and come down to more of a reality now. So I do think it is AI, but it's as I said, it's an AI that's softer than the one that we were all sold when we watched Terminator. But basically, it's a softer one that interacts with us. Like, you have Alexa now, and you can talk to it, and it talks back to you. It's the same sort of thing that we want to have in procurement, is this ability to use the tools that we're familiar with. Even your ERP system, you can do good spend management from your ERP system if your ERP system is advised by machine learning and some of the tools that are out there. That's kind of the Nintendo approach here, is to be able to say, hey, you don't need to learn a UI. You're still raising orders in your SAP system or whatever. That's fine. Just do that. But we'll present all the rules that needs to have to the supplier. Make sure that we guide them to fit all the criteria for it to get into get it back and forth with SAP, and we'll make sure that all flows nicely. So that's been the approach thus far. And I think that's kind of where the industry's going.
Yeah, it sounds like it sort of like manually lifts, or it lifts the manual aspects from those ERPs that are extremely manual.
Yeah.
So you don't have to spend all that time going through all those manual processes.
Yeah, the human element that's still involved in buying, there's two aspects to it. There's there's the tedious aspect of filling out forms and translating this to that and moving this and keying in stuff. And then there's the exceptional stuff where you just need humans. There's an art to procurement, especially when it gets to sourcing and some contract negotiations and stuff. But there's an art that's always going to be a human element to that, and should have the human element. That's, humans have some abilities that AI is going to take a long time to ever help with. So what we want to do is separate those. It's like, if you could find a tedious thing, all those screens that you have to wade through in SAP, or the different kinds of workflows that you need to approve in your Reba system or whatever, we can take that tedious part out and keep the exceptions, so that the humans are actually truly exceptional people, right? They're just doing the exception management. That's what we want to do.
Exactly. Yes, humans can be thoughtful and strategic. We definitely need them, and it's nice to have job security, right? As technology grows, it's nice to know we're still going to be needed.
Yeah.
So Paul, tell me something that maybe we don't know about you. Something that maybe your professional network would be surprised to hear.
Let me see. Well, I mean, I do have I have a love of languages, actually, different languages out there, and even different accents within languages. So that's something that's eternally interesting to me. I grew up monolingual basically, but then I took Spanish in high school, but promptly forgot that. But somehow I got on in college. I took a class in Japanese, and then I went to Japan and lived there. And that kind of spurred it on. Later on in life, I took a sabbatical and I went around France and hitchhiked, and I learned French, and that was weird. I married a girl in France and brought her back here. So there's these things that just keep on coming up, new languages that kind of interest me, and I think it has to do with just seeing how people express themselves in different ways, unique ways, interesting ways, and still get the job done in terms of expressing what they feel and what they're thinking. So I think it all kind of comes back to that. But I've always been kind of a between person, if you will, and languages kind of bring that to bear for me.
Fascinating. Yeah, I would imagine that would be very interesting. I'm curious, is there anything that you've seen that sort of connects multiple different languages? Is there anything that kind of remains the same throughout, or is it all just so different and so unique and complex from each other?
Well, no, I think that there's a lot of connections with just language families and things like that. But there's always a context that languages have, and I'm always on the search for a special word in a language that kind of doesn't perfectly exist in English, and it only is best expressed in that language, and there are those are out there that are interesting. But it's funny, as you say, is there a common element? When I was in Japan, it struck me that, as different as Japan is from the US, and unique in all these ways, that there are some things that are just the same everywhere, and I worked it down to kind of a list of 3. There's always has to be a list of 3 things, right? So the most obvious thing is that children are the same everywhere. Seeing a 2 or 3-year-old or a 5-year-old run around, or I had a host family and I had an 8-year-old, and he was just rambunctious little kid, and he was just like little kids here. And so that was good. And then another time that this struck me was that on the train, when they do the announcement of the stops, everybody on the train, whether they spoke that language or not, kind of looked up at the speaker and said, "What is he saying?" It's because, it's like in New York City, if you're on the train, you can't understand those guys. They've said it so many times that they just say it so fast or in such a way. So I thought that was kind of funny. And then the third thing was politicians. They seem to be the same, no matter which country you're in. So I do think that there's a lot that links humanity, whether you express yourself in different languages or not, but there's also some unique little tidbits to be had if you look for them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that children are the same everywhere. They all just wanna, yeah, I love that. So what do you wish somebody would have told you early on in your career? Something that maybe you could pass down to some youngsters listening today.
Those Gen Z guys on the
Those Gen
table.
Z guys taking over the world. Watch out
Well,
for them.
I mean, the thing that served me well for a while, it's kind of scary and risky in terms of a career thing, but I had this philosophy to design myself out of a job. And that was that if somebody gave me a job, I tried to figure out a way that people would look at me 6 to 9 months later and say, it's a waste of time you there. We need to move you somewhere else where it's harder because you got this locked and loaded. You're almost not doing anything anymore because you've automated this, that, or the other thing. So, and that was that internal kind of entrepreneurial thing that I got was, you know, where I really crystallized this was I was at a company that had this really antiquated ERP system, and a lot of functionality just wasn't being used, and I started to use it and tweak it for my own purposes so that it could kind of do the things automatically for me, and I could just sit back and let it happen. You know, I designed myself out of that job, basically this thing, you know, the risk is that they say, well, we don't need you anymore, thank you, goodbye. But hopefully if you do it in a good way, they see that you're exceptional and that you can then move on to something else and try to solve other problems. And you know, the biggest problems a lot of companies have is around scaling. It's not so much about, do you have your own job security in this sort of static atmosphere? Most companies want to be growing, and if they're going to be growing, then they have to hire. And if they don't have to hire as fast because you've been able to scale your job and make it possible, well, heck, that's a good path to be on in terms of managing things. So that would be my thing, is try to think of a way to design yourself out of a job, and that usually serves good purposes for you.
Yes, I love that. Design your way out of the job. Automate, create processes.
Yeah.
And truly, I mean, that's giving back to the organization. That's helping the organization scale.
Yep.
Not only helps you get promoted, but yeah, it helps you be more strategic too with your time. No, that's
Exactly.
great advice. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Paul. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who tuned in to listen to Tenure Talks today. Y'all go out there and have a very blessed week.
Thanks for the time.